Hello, this is Mr. Rasmussen with Algebra 1 and Lesson 109. This one involves advanced trinomial factoring. And what's advanced about it is that the first term you'll see has a number, and so that actually adjusts how we figure the numbers that go into the two binomials that we factored into. Let's start out by looking at example 1 here, and you can see the three terms there, the trinomial. Let's write it into descending order here as a first part. So 2x minus 7x minus 15. Now it's in descending order, and notice we've got a 2 here in the front, which changes things for today's lesson. Now remember, we're going to factor it into two binomials like that. And normally we're just putting an x and an x in the front there. But now this one, these two terms when multiplied together have to equal 2x squared. So in that case, there's only really one possibility, 2 times 1. So that one's understood, but we'll write it there for sake. Okay, then we need to find a second number that we're writing in here that when multiplied together gives us negative 15. So we know one's going to be negative and one's going to be positive. However, when we add them together, we're not just adding both those numbers we also first have to multiply the outside, this one here, we have to multiply that by the 2 and then add them. So it gets a little tricky here. So let's work through some options. If we were to put in well, let's just start working through this. Let's say we have negative 15. So let's put a negative here and a positive here, and put 15 here and a 1 here. So one possibility for our two numbers multiplied together is negative 15 times 1, which gives us negative 15. However, what is that? We got to get to a middle term here of negative 7. So we multiply both of these and get negative 15. We multiply the outside and get positive 2, add them, and we get negative 13. So that one doesn't work. Let's switch our signs, because that does matter now, because the 2 is affecting that. So let's switch our signs. Let's make this one a positive and this one a negative. And if we do that, then we get a positive 15, and then multiply those and get a negative 2. That looks like same thing, it just switches our sign. It gives us a 13 again, but it's a positive 13 instead of a negative 13. Okay, let's try switching the numbers. Okay, that's going to make a bigger difference here. Let's put the 1 here and the 15 here. If we do that, 1 times 1 is 1, but negative 15 times 2 is now negative 30. We get an answer of negative 29 for that. Negative 29x, that one doesn't work. If we flip our signs to be a positive 29, that also doesn't work. So in this case, 1 and 15 are not good factors to use. Okay, let's check our other factors out. 2x, let's rewrite this here. Okay, the number 1 is understood. All right, what else can we multiply to get negative 15? Well, how about we do negative 3 and a positive 5? Okay, so negative 3 and a positive 5. Another way to look at that, let's write it, I'm going to write it out here, x squared. Let's do a negative 5 here, and then x plus 3, right? So that the positions matter. Okay, let's see which one of these works out. If we multiply this one out, we're going to get a negative 3, and then multiply the outside, we get a positive 10. We add those together, we get 7. Okay, so that's what we're going to want to do there. However, we need to be a negative 7, and so we got to flip our signs. So it's going to be 2x plus 3, and then x minus 5. What does that do for us? Well, we multiply these together. It gives us a positive 3 in the middle. If we multiply the outside, the 2 here, gives us a negative 10. All right, so that gives us a negative 7x in the middle, and the other parts work. 3 times negative 5 is 15. All right, if we had looked at this one here, it would give us a negative 5x here, and then 3 times 2x would give us a 6x. That would give us a positive 1x, or if we had flipped our signs, a negative 1x, and that didn't work. Okay, so there's a little bit of trial and error in this. Just like when we normally solve the trinomial into two binomials, we got to figure out which factors work. This just adds a second layer of complexity to it, because when you add the numbers, you got to multiply the outers first. Okay, let's work through example 2 here. It's already written to us in descending order. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go write my 2 sets of parentheses. I have a 3x here and then x, right? 3x. I split the x times x is x squared, and 3 times 1, there are my 2 factors. All right, for my 2, really, this is more simplistic, because the only way I can write this is a 1 and a 2, right? 1 times 2, and 1 needs to be negative, so let's make this one negative and this one positive. Okay, so we've got 2 things to check out. 1, are signs in the right place, or 2, are numbers in the right place. Actually, I'm going to back up here a little bit and ask myself a little bit of a question. If my middle term is negative, then I want the larger of my numbers to be negative, and in this case my 2 is larger and my 1 is smaller, so let's try putting it that way. Okay, if I multiply these 2 terms out, I get 1x. Multiply these 2 terms out, I get negative 6x. That gives me negative 5x. Negative 5x doesn't work. If I flip my signs, it's going to give me a positive 5x. That also doesn't work. So it looks like my numbers are in the wrong spot. So let's rewrite this and switch the numbers. Let's put the 2 here, and then let's put x and the 1 there. Now I got my issue of my signs. 1 positive, 1 negative. If this last number is associated with the 3, so I want that to be negative and this one to be positive, because it looks like that's going to be turning out larger. So let's see if that works. 2 times the negative 1 gives me the negative 2 I'm looking for there. 3x times the x gives me a 3x squared I'm looking for there. Then I multiply these 2 and get 2x. I multiply my outers and get negative 3x. Add those together and I get negative 1x, or understood. There's my answer for example 2. All right, let's look at example 3 here. Set out my 2 sets of parentheses. Start out by putting my 5x and then my other x. And then now I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiplied together give me negative 6. We know one's going to be a negative, one's going to be a positive. 13 is a large number, and it's larger than 6. So that really makes me think my larger number factor here is going to be multiplied by the 5, and I want it to be a negative. So let's put the negative here. That way, whatever we multiply by the 5 is going to be negative in the larger number. And then I have 2 possibilities, right? I have 1 times 6, or I have 2 times 3. Now, if I put a 6 here, that's going to give me 30. That looks way too large. That's not going to work. If I put the 6 here, then my number is not going to be big enough. So we're going to use the 2 and the 3. And since I got to get the 13, 2 times 5 only gets me to 10. And since they're opposite signs, they're going to work against each other. So I'm not going to be adding like a 3 and a 10. They're going to be working against each other. Okay, so it looks like a 3 here and a 2 here. That works for my negative 6. That works for my first term. 2 times x is 2x. The negative 3 times the 5x is negative 15x. Add those together and I get negative 13x. So this is my correct answer. All right, go ahead and work through the practice problems yourself, and then check your work with my work. All right, practice problem A, I'm going to write that in descending order first. 2x squared minus 11x minus 21. All right, and then set my parentheses out here. 2x and x gives me multiplied for first terms, right? And then the second 2 multiplied needs to give me negative 21. I'm going to start out by putting the negative second and the positive first. 2 numbers. Well, how about 1 and 21? That seems too large to, if we have 21 minus 2, we're not getting close to 11. So it looks like we're going with 3 and 7. I'm going to put the 7 here and the 3 here. See if that works. Negative 11 is negative, so I want my larger numbers to be negative, and so set up here. All right, so 3x, and then if I multiply my outers, I get negative 14x. Add those together, negative 11x. This is the correct answer for practice problem A. Oops, sorry. This is the correct answer. There we go. Okay, practice problem B. Put my 2 sets of parentheses out there. Start out by splitting my first term, the factor of 3 times 1. All right, and then I've got a small second one, so I only have 1 times 2. And so I'm going to put, and I need to get all the way up to a 5, so I'm going to multiply my 3 times the 2, put the 1 here. In negative, so one's negative, one's positive. My middle term is positive, so let's put the positive with the larger part and the negative there. Let's check to see if that works. Negative 1x, when you multiply these two, when you multiply your outers, okay, you got to multiply those two together, I get a positive 6x, add it together, I get 5x. That is my middle term. This is my correct answer for practice problem B. All right, so once again, this is just going through, and as you do factor, just make sure you multiply correctly, right? We got to multiply. Let's back up here a little bit. When we multiply this out, right, this 3x has got to get multiplied by both of these, the x and the 2. You multiply it by the x, it gives you this first term. Multiply it by the 2, it's giving you this middle guy that is a like term with the second part. When you multiply the negative 1 times the x, like terms, add those. And then you got to multiply your negative 1 times the second part, which gives you your last term. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Have a great day.